Good. Okay. Just one moment. Oh. Okay. I had to disconnect the other monitor. Right, so we have this picture. Someone had this idea of what it must have been like to kill prey and had to cut it apart with very, very basic tools. All right, so let's have a look at the time scale. Now, Earth, we estimate around 4.6 billion years. And if we convert that into 1 hour, the first 50 minutes, well, we had tiny single-cell organisms, and then very early plants, very early land animals eventually came. So in the last 10 minutes, by the way, when I say single-cell organisms, most of them were either bacteria or plants, and there were a couple which resembled animals, but they were single-cell, they were not quite animals, like amoeba, for example. For of the last 10 minutes, we have animal life, and humans, we estimate on this hour basis, we've been here for the last 10 seconds. So we've done some good things, and we've done some not so good things to the Earth. So on this scale, we have, going back to say 248, or let's say 250 million years ago. 250 million years is when the origin of what we call the dinosaurs, the big lizards, the big reptiles. Around then 200 odd million years, we started getting what are called the gymnosperms. They're the plants where they don't have the normal seeds. Gymno means naked, sperm means seed. So they have a naked seed, so that it's basically, it's a cell without any, they're like spores. And that's what these guys have. They don't last very, very long at all. But they were the dominant plants. The pines and the spruces and those sort of. So we go another few million years, then we get the flowering plants, and they're very important because the whole process of their reproduction and their lives are very different. When we get to the Cenozoic era here is the origin of primates. The original primates around 65 million years on. It's interesting because the asteroid that hit North America was about 65 million years ago. And the big dinosaurs, the whole lot, most of them, sorry, died out due to what's called the nuclear winter. Now, the nuclear winter, what happened is when the asteroid hit the ground, it sent up, it was huge, it sent up so much dust and dirt and whatever was around when it hit. It was so powerful, it went into the higher atmosphere, and the strong winds, they're called the jet streams, they completely surrounded the Earth, and it stopped the sun coming through. So a lot of the plants died. The animals didn't have what to eat, the bigger animals, and they died out. So that's when the dinosaurs died out. Mm-hmm. And and eventually all this dust settled down, and all around the world, if the geologists look, go to the and they find a yellow layer in the rock. It's about a centimeter wide or deep, and it's all they can date it. And it's all around that 65 million year time. But a lot of the mammals, because they were warm-blooded, survived that winter, that time, and from there we developed. Then all the mammals developed from then, from this big cataclysmic event. So the primates is about that time. Humans appear about 2 million years ago, but not humans like us. It was the Homo group. I'll get to that later. But before them, there were many other forms of early human. We separated from the chimpanzees about 6 million years ago. I just realized that I haven't
muted.
I need to mute. I think I have to stop this for a second. Stop the share and mute all. I forgot something. Oh, Preeti's here too. So I'll just go back. Okay, let's move on. So the species that we're talking about are not, it's not a sudden occurrence. It takes a long time. And this idea of one animal or one plant changing to another is not that simple. We have this process though, and it's very gradual, and we go into common ancestors, and that applies to all living things. So just to give you, just in the start of this, how we got there, we have these things called, these names, these words, hominids and hominins. So the hominids are, we're all hominids, if you like. The orangutans, the gorillas, the chimps, and us. But the hominins are purely the humans. And because we're just so different. The chimpanzees are our closest relationship. The gorillas are a little bit further back, and the orangutans separated much earlier because of their geography. The gorillas, chimps, and us were in Africa. The orangutans were in around the Indonesian area, around where they are now. So the hominids, all modern and extinct great apes, what I mentioned, but not the gibbons. The gibbons are more like monkeys, and they're much earlier than these guys. The hominins, any species of her early human, it's more that's more closely related to us than chimpanzees. So even there, from chimpanzees, the very early humans, it was hard to tell the difference. But then, as time went on, things have changed, and then you could find, well, they're not hominids anymore; they're hominins. Now we have these idea of common ancestor. So if we, for example, back here, the last common ancestor of all monkeys and apes, and there were two lines, and this shows a certain group of animals going through, and they're called the New World monkeys. I'll come back to that in a minute. And then a bit further on, they separated the Old World monkeys. And the proconsuls, they're a type of monkey, but closer to the orangutans, but not quite. And then orangutans, gorillas, chimps, and us. These old world and new world monkeys refers to where they lived. Africa was known to Europeans for a long, long time. And all the animals in Africa were the old world. When Columbus and the other explorers went to the Americas, especially South America, they found these amazing monkeys and many other animals. And because they were newly found, new information, they were called New World monkeys. And that's what those two words refer to. And by the way, this is called a cladogram. It's like a family history. It's a cladogram, and they are part of a group of a clade. Okay, so chimps and humans, because we're so close, and as I said, we only separated about 6 million years ago, which in the scheme of things is not that long ago. We have about 99% of our genetics is the same. The proconsul is it's been extinct for a long time, but it's sort of a very early hominid, and it looks more like a dog, and these are just diagrams. This came from the bones that they found, and then someone came up with this diagram here. But we're talking about maybe 25 million years ago. So he was a mixture of old world monkey and ape characteristics. And neither here nor there. So he was in the process of going from chimpanzee to human. So how are we classified? We are classified in the kingdom of Animalia, which are the animals. We're in a phylum of group of animals with backbones. We have a spinal cord. In the class of mammals, Mammalia, now the order is the next level, Primata, so we're the primates. Over there, from the primates, we're in the family of Hominidae. Okay, they're the humans, but not all Hominidae were Homo, which is the next level. Homo means man, and our species is sapiens, means wise. We are, what are we? If we write Homo sapiens, we are wise man. And I'll point out something you may or may not have noticed, that all these words are capitalized, except the species is always lowercase, and that's standard. And when you print it, you do it in italics. So the genetics differences, and now with our knowledge, very strong knowledge of a very vast knowledge of genetics, we can even work out the percentage differences between individual humans and other species as well. So between individuals, we have a very small difference in our genetics, and it's about a 0.1%. So it's very, very small, because we're all different, but the differences are small, genetically speaking. Now, with chimpanzees and humans, the difference is about 1.2. Okay, so our common ancestor was about 6 million years ago. You'll see this abbreviation a few times. 6 million years ago, as I mentioned before. Then further back, genetic difference between us about and gorillas about 1.6%, and the chimpanzees are the bonobos I haven't mentioned. They are a form of chimpanzees, and they're called pygmy chimpanzees. They're smaller, they're different, but they're also in Africa. And so we all show, the chimps, the bonobos, and us, the same amount of difference from gorillas. So that's how close we are. Now, the difference between us and African apes us and the African apes, and the difference with Asian apes, the orangutans, is huge, 3.1%. And again, this is because of the geography, because they live so far apart. They never actually mated. They didn't come together, and so they each evolved in their own separate way, and then the genetics became more diluted, the difference. Now, the great apes and humans differ from the rhesus monkeys. They're called the macaques, and it's about 7%. Now, even that is fairly close, and that is why people, scientists used, I don't know, they don't do it much now, but they used to use rhesus monkeys, or macaques, for medical experiments. And that's when they discovered that we have a particular protein in our, or some of us have, a particular protein in our blood, which became known as the rhesus factor. So you either have it or you don't have it, so you're positive or negative. And it's a very important aspect of our blood aspects. So we eventually, instead of being quadrupeds, where we moved around on 4 limbs, we became bipeds. We moved on 2 limbs, being able to stand up and do things. What did it do? It freed our hands. We could carry tools. We could carry food. We could carry babies. We could carry weapons. We had a sexual dimorphism in provisioning. So what that means is that because we have 2 varieties of sex, we have male and female, but they're quite different looking. In other animals, the differences are very minor, but we have a very strong difference between male and female, and that's what became important in providing food, providing whatever has to be provided for community. And changes in the climate and the environment in the jungle that favored a more elevated eye position. Now I'll get to that one later. And to reduce the amount of skin exposed to the sun, a lot less skin is when you're vertical as opposed to when you're horizontal. And there are others, which we'll come to later. So what had to happen anatomically to produce all these differences in us? Now, the foramen magnum is a hole in the skull, down the bottom of the skull, where the where the spinal cord moves in or out, whichever way you like to look at it, or from the brain. But it's at the bottom of the skull. I'll picture shortly. Our pelvis has been readjusted so we can be vertical. A zygomatic arch. Now, your cheek bones, I don't know if you can see me, but the cheekbone is, and I'll show you diagrams, had to change to be able to change the shape of the mouth. And they lead to changes to the jaws. The forehead changed to accommodate a greater volume of brain. Arms and legs change from longer arms to shorter arms, and the shape of the hands and the feet, well, it all changed. So the brain also became larger to be able to do all the things that we do. And besides the shapes of the hands and the feet, there were other changes which allowed us to do things, not only the shape, but the mechanisms. Okay, now here's the foramen magnum. Here's the, if you have a skull, I'm sorry, when we had face-to-face lessons, I used to borrow skulls and so on, different things from a friend of mine taught a bit, or still teaches Bialik, but I thought online it'd be more difficult to do. But so I got more pictures. This is the base of looking up at the base of the skull. Here's a hole called the foramen magnum. And on inside the skull is the brain, and this is where the spinal cord comes out. This here, these arches, that's what I was talking about before. This thing, where is it? The zygomatic arch, and the muscles that move, allow the jaw to move, are attached to the zygomatic arches on the inside, from the zygomatic arch to the jaw, and also from the skull, but through this cavity here. And so you depends. And the bigger this arch is, the more bone there is, the more muscles, and that indicates that the animal is eating things which need to be chewed harder. Whereas we are, because we cook our food is very, very soft. So we have a very small zygomatic arch. I hope that makes sense. So, okay, that I've mentioned that there's a spinal cord running through that. So here we have a diagram, a vertical brain. Here's the brain, and there's a spinal cord running there through the vertebrae. Now, if you look at animals that are quadrupeds, like dogs, horses, anything like that, the backbone is horizontal, and really the head is also horizontal. So to get the spinal cord into the brain, the foramen magnum is right at the back there. Now, chimpanzees are partially vertical. So through evolution, their foramen magnum has moved forward. And for us to be fully vertical, it's dead center. Okay, so us to be able to become bipedal, that means walking on 2 feet, not 4, the foramen magnum has to be there to be able to support. And there's no way a dog or even a chimp can walk vertically for any leg in it. Well, a dog certainly can't. A chimp can walk on 2 feet, hind feet, but not for long. The body just won't let it. So here are a few skulls in evolution. And I'll come back to some of these. I'll come back to all of these later. But the lovely photos to show, you can, the first thing you may notice is humans are the only animals that have a chin. None of these have. Lucy, the Australopithecus afarensis, and the Australo means southern country, southern area, but Australia means southern country. Afarensis is from the Afar Valley. It's near Kenya. And look at the small volume of the brain. The the top of the head is horizontal. The eyebrows are quite prominent. And it's got a snout. Okay. Homo habilis was again. I'll a lot more detail later, but this is just to show the difference. Now you can see a bit of a raised hump there, so the brain is getting bigger, and again, with no chin, but the jaw is very, very thick. And there's the foramen. Sorry, the I've lost the word. Yeah. So this area is very thick, and to hold the muscles to be able to work the jaw, and it still has prominent eyebrow ridges. Neanderthal man. These are homos, as you notice. The homo means man, which started about 6 million years ago. And Neanderthal man, it was found in the Neander Valley in Germany, and the first one. So this is a much bigger brain, much bigger. It's almost vertical there, but still has ridges, eyebrow ridges. The jaw is much smaller, and then we get to us. And we have our brows are almost vertical. So, all right, have a look at the skull and brain differences. The brain, these weights are the average weights of the brains of now humans, chimps, orangutans, macaques, and monkeys. They're just 4 skulls next to each other. Big differences. Very interesting. But you can clearly see that the eye ridges and how flat the brain, the skull is here compared to the human. And here's a chimp. Again, another photo, face to face. Very, very different. Very different. See what 6 million years can do? Wow. This shows the capacity, the volume of the brain. So all these early ones, it's about 500 mil. This is in years. So Sahelanthropus, very early man, Australopithecus, about there, I don't know, 4 million years ago. And then around here, Homo habilis, everything was shot up after that. Something happened, no idea what, but something happened, and from Homo habilis, erectus, Neanderthalensis, and us. And we have 3 times the brain capacity of a very early man from about 6 or 7 million years ago. This is, I'm not sure why it's there, but it's from about that area. Here's another another diagram. The green lines indicate how long from the records from the skeletons that were found from the bones, how long they survived, they were around. So if you look at these early ones, here's 4 million years, here there's 3. So Australopithecus afarensis was there for less than 1 million years. And these ones, Rodolfensis, Augusta, you don't need to remember all the names, but Homo erectus is very important. We'll come back to him or her. He's Homo habilis. Now, Homo erectus, which means that he was the first one. I'm just using here for, I don't know why, but anyway, I think it's actually for a very long time. Homo sapiens is the last little bit here, but 200,000 years. That's us. And Neanderthals a little bit earlier. I've given you this diagram. It's at the very end of the notes. And look at the variations in the skeleton. So we've got an Australopithecus and the Paranthropus, very early. If you look at these fingers, more like today's chimps. Look at the rib cage. So the skull was very different, especially that one. The ribs, they're way out there and there, and these were not necessarily walking upright. The pelvis is very different, and more bowl shape, getting there to be able to hold our babies when we're vertical. I mean, support the baby as it develops. The ratio of arms to legs, the arms used to be longer than the legs, like the modern chimps do, and the gorillas and so on, whereas our arms are shorter than the legs. The hip and femur angle, this angle here, is quite different. This is going back to 2011 newspaper cutting. I was tossing up whether to send this article to you as well, but I think it's a little bit dated. But if you look at these, the shape of the bodies of these early man. So this is Ardipithecus, Australopithecus, and so on. And the head, the back, the hips, everything leads to us being there. This is Neanderthal man, and Homo erectus. He was the first one. Homo habilis is another one, but we'll get to them. So here, a very interesting diagram I found of what I call the anatomical positioning. So his man is straight down, and this is man's, if you like, shadow, or just the area that the body covers. Early man, they're a little bit larger. Chimpanzee, much larger. Now, to be able to do that, we went from this pelvis to this pelvis. So to be bipedal, to be erect, and have a gait. Gait is the way we walk, not the thing that swings. You need to have total change in the structure, in the shape, even the way the muscles work. And you can see even in these drawings, the gradual movement, and very, very, a very good diagram. This is a diagram that comparing chimpanzees with Australopithecines. And these are very early man, who developed eventually, but early on from chimp. And the head is still much the same. But have a look at where the spinal cord goes into the head. Okay, it's moving. A dog would be at the back there. So it's different, but not the same as ours. So the whole thing has changed. The femur has changed. The angle of the femur to the pelvis there it's quite different, and so on. So here we have the foot of a man and a chimp. So we have a large heel, they have a small heel. The ankle is adapted for walking, and the ankle here is adapted for climbing. We have a stiff midfoot, so we can propel, so we can run. Chimps can't run really well. They can sort of hobble, but they have a flexible midfoot so they can climb. They need that to be able to do that. And the adduction of the big foot in line with the other digits. Whereas here, you need the big toe. The big toe is to help us walk. Without the big toe, we would have a lot of trouble walking. It's almost impossible, apparently. But here, they needed it for climbing, for grasping things. So here's the different primates' hands: chimps, humans, orangutans, baboons, gorillas, siamang. So the siamangs and the baboons are classified as monkeys, but they are a form of an ape. Here the gorilla, the orangutan, and the chimp. Now, they're all different. But look at the orangutan, how the thumb and the fingers are in a relationship to each other. Whereas with us, we actually use, we can use our fingers, and we do use our fingers and thumb to be able to pick things up very carefully. Now the chimp is much better, much closer. The gorilla too can do it, but these are much more difficult for them. With the feet, have a note here in the orangutan, the big toe is out here. So the gorilla, so the chimp's getting closer to us. Or we're closer to it. Siamangs and baboons are very different also. So these 5 can climb. We can't use our feet to climb, but we can run. And then we've got a series of drawings that you can find anywhere. And basically, you look at the ratio of the arms to the legs. You look at the shape of the backbone, the angle between the backbone and the skull, and you end up with this vertical idea. Here's another one. They're all over the place. If you do a bit of search, it's very simple, and all these drawings come up. Also, look at the size of the head, but not so much the face, but the brain. And of course, as we saw before on the graph, the brain is much, much bigger. This is a cartoon from, I can't remember what it is, for 2009. This chimpanzee type animal coming down. That's one small step for a primate, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, this is Ardipithecus. Okay, so very early man, well, not a chimp, and but still looks like a chimp. Now this is a different sort of a diagram. It's the human tree, if you like, and that's why it's done this way. And again, the colored bars are the length of time that over which fossils have been found. We are up here. The range is down to 6 million years, and you can see the sort of coming off branches. And I won't go through it. It takes quite a bit of time to go through each one of them, but the ones that we'll be talking about are Robustus, Sediba, the Ergaster habilis, Rudolph. Oh, we want to mention Rudolph. Heidelbergensis here. The Neanderthal will spend time on, Erectus, and so on. But I just put these in for you to look at in your own time. Here's another one. Just people come up with different versions of it. So of this idea. So it shows you the Australopithecus, the Paranthropus, and the Homos. So, and again, the Austral, they're from the southern areas. Okay, I want to spend time there. Okay, let's look at individual early man. Very famous picture of Australopithecus afarensis. The bone, the bone was found. I think it was a thigh bone, and turned out to be a female, and then all the bones that they found of this this early man are laid out here, and this is the standard way of doing it. And it turned out to be a female, and weren't very tall. And while I'm racking my brain to remember the name of the people the main guy who found it, and I can't think of it. But anyway, the radio was on, the Beatle music was on, and this guy was working on these bones, and he said to his wife, "We need to give her a name." And just then, the Beatles song "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds" came on, and the wife said, "Hey, Lucy," and since then she was known as Lucy. But that's the story. Okay, so this is it's only 2 minutes of video. I won't show you all. I've got lots of little video clips in this talk, but I won't show you all of them. Now I'll get this one going. And I'll have to, okay, I'll share screen. Where is it? Here, I think. There's no audio, you have to read. Okay, so you see how the chimp tries to walk upright. Lucy is much better. Now comparing Lucy with modern human, look at the size difference. The neck's different. Look at the ribs and the pelvis. Yeah, the angle, yeah, the angle of the femurs, the feet are different. Now we got the three of them. The shoulder blades. Oh, no. Go back.
3.5 million years ago, Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, one of the most important fossils ever found, roams the African savanna. Today, using the latest scientific research, we're going to reconstruct her life and her death.
Hang on. So I've lost you guys somewhere. All right. So where we are now is is that we have a number of videos. There.
Sorry, Ruben, we can't see your screen anymore.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, hang on. No, wrong one. Hang on. All these other stuff coming up on my screen. Yeah. Share screen. Walking with Lucia. Where is it? Where is it? I don't want that. Stop share. I seem to have lost. Looks like I have to go back to the beginning. I don't know why. All right, try again. No. Sorry about this, guys. I don't know what's happened. Share screen again. I have to go back here. Share that. Okay. All right. These, you can see this now. Someone tell me.
Yes, we can. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. All right. Naming of Lucy and brief history of human evolution. Very interesting. It's there for you to see. I'm not sure I'll have enough time to show it to you, but good. The next guy, the Homo erectus, he was really the first erect man, if you like. And there are all sorts of values of being bipedal. So you can see over tall grass. So you can see where your prey can be, and also where where carnivores like lions could be. They can carry tools, they can carry weapons, babies, food. They also had a hairless, pretty much hairless skin. Get much better temperature control of the body, and they found that greater reduction in attacks by parasites. So by having lost the fur, if you like, the hair, Homo erectus could survive much better without being too sick and being able to do, I mean, carrying weapons, of course. They end up in battles and fights, but you can also do all these other things like carry things like food and babies. So Homo erectus, it was the first of our relatives in our proportions, shorter arms, longer legs relative to its body. It's also the first known homonym to migrate out of Africa. And I think most possibly the first to cook food. Now, by cooking food, especially meat, the amount of protein and the amount of fat increased in the diet. And you need the protein, you need the fat for the brain to become bigger. but a vegetarian doesn't have the capacity to grow their brain. I don't mean human vegetarian, just animals that eat just vegetables. Now the fossils of Homo erectus stretch over about 1.5 million years. So the same, it's the longest surviving of all our human relatives. So that was a major breakthrough in the development of the human body. So here's some facts. So about 2 million years ago, to about 250,000 years ago, Africa, and I said they moved on. They went to Asia, they went to Europe, so that they're all over the place by then. The humans were body proportions were like ours. They were upright. The brow, they still had a protruding brow. They had a large face but no chin. Remember, us Homo sapiens were the first ones with a chin. Now the brain was varied, and with time it got bigger. With the height maximum seemed to be about 1.8 meters, and that's taller than what most of us is. What most of us are, rather, but 1.4 to 1.8 meters. Their weight 41 to 65, well, so they're more slight than us. Diet, meat. They didn't have the weapons to kill, so they were scavenging. So, and they think maybe later on they started hunting, but there wasn't much evidence. There isn't much evidence for that. And of course, they ate plants. Now, the species was named, this is interesting, in 1893, and so it was called Anthropopithecus erectus, and then it was renamed of Pithecanthropus erectus in 1894, the following year, and the event Homo erectus in 1950. So, as people studied the bones and came to various conclusions, they changed the genus name and to what it is now. It basically means upright human. So we go to the Neanderthals. So the Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. So Homo means man, sapiens means wise, and neanderthalensis means from the Neander Valley. That's where it was originally found. So their DNA is almost the same as ours. They are our closest ancestor, which developed about 500,000 years ago. We developed about 200,000 years ago. There are some unsolved questions, though. They don't know much about it. Did they evolve from Homo erectus? We don't know. They died out about 40,000 years ago. Why? I don't know. Was it genocide by Homo sapiens? Or were they outcompeted for resources? Or maybe because they lived through an ice age, maybe they couldn't survive there. We don't know. And so again, when they lived across Europe, Southwest and Central Asia, this is interesting. They had a large nose, which is useful for people in warm climates, not in cold climates. They had a double arched brow above the eye. They were relatively short and stocky. Their brain size, a bit less than ours. Their height, about 1.75 maximum. I think I'm 1.72, so it's about my height was maximum for them. And so they were heavier, they were stockier than erectus, and they ate meat, which is really good, plants and fungi, shellfish. because they know this because of in the caves that they lived in, they found the remnants of all these. The species were named in 1864. And I've mentioned that already. So here's I can't remember which museum. I think it's the Human Museum in America, one of them. So the supraorbital ridge is this ridge above the eyes. Supra means above the orbit. That's the eye. And the gene sequences show that they had red hair and pale skin. And the pale skin would not have gone down well in Africa. Now, let's see, I'll try and show you this. What's the time? I think we'll try, and hopefully I'll find my way back.
The Super Mario Brothers movie.
Neanderthals are often depicted as brutish cavemen, but science shows that our early ancestors were actually quite advanced. Neanderthals, or Homo neanderthalensis, are our closest relatives in the human family tree. The species lived from about 400,000 to 40,000 years ago and inhabited an area that stretched as far west as Europe's Atlantic coast and as far east as Central Asia. Their habitat reached northward to modern-day Belgium, making them the first humans to survive a cold glacial ecosystem. The North's cold environment may have influenced Neanderthals' physique. Their bodies were relatively short, with males averaging 5 feet 5 inches and females 5 feet 1 inch tall. And they were stocky, with broad chests, bulky torsos, and muscular limbs. These adaptations helped Neanderthals generate and retain body heat. Also, their noses were large and had relatively high bridges. This created a nasal chamber that warmed and humidified the cold, dry air they'd breathe in northern regions. Apart from adaptations that helped Neanderthals survive a harsh wintry habitat, the species also developed large brains. They were similar in size to modern humans' brains and were often larger. An increase in brain size may have played a significant role in another type of adaptation: culture. Culture is indicative of an intelligent species, and archaeological evidence suggests that Neanderthals had a relatively sophisticated culture. They built shelters, made and wore clothing, and created advanced tools. In fact, they were the first human species to make tools out of bone, not just stone. They also created objects that served ornamental purposes. Neanderthals are suspected to be the first humans to carry out the symbolic gesture of burying their dead and adorning gravesites with flowers. Neanderthals may have also created what may be the world's oldest cave art, which was found in Spain. Despite advances in their culture, sometime after 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals mysteriously disappeared. Some scientists believe the Neanderthals were killed or outcompeted by modern humans, or Homo sapiens, who arrived in Europe at around the same time as the Neanderthals' extinction. However, another theory suggests that Neanderthals mated with modern humans and were absorbed into the humans' much larger population. That may explain why most people of European or Asian descent have 1 to 2% Neanderthal genes in their DNA. For more than 150 years, Neanderthals have perplexed anthropologists. The first Neanderthal fossil specimen was discovered in Belgium in 1829 by Philippe Charles Schmerling. However, it wasn't officially classified as Neanderthal until decades later. The first fossil to be recognized as Neanderthal and as an early human or genus Homo fossil was found in 1856 by Quareman in Germany. The new species was named Neanderthalensis after the area where the fossils were found, Neander Valley. Neanderthals' fossils tell us how evolution built them to be sturdy to survive their harsh environment. But their tools, art, and DNA tell us that their resilience also involved innovation, creativity, and social behavior, much like Homo sapiens today.
Okay. Get over that. Let's go back to where we were. No, I have to find us again. No, it's Lucy. It seems to disappear. I'm not sure why. No, where is it? I'll have to go back to the beginning. Sorry, guys. Okay. So in 2003, you might remember a tiny Indonesian island called the Flores Island. They found these skeletons, there's seven of them, and they turned out to be Homo, almost Homo sapiens, but because they're a little bit different. And because were found on the island of Flores, they were called Homo floresiensis. They ranged in age from 38,000 years old to 13. So they were there for a long time and very close to Australia. And they weren't more than a meter tall. They had very stone tools and were quite sophisticated. But the stone tools range from 59,000 years ago. So they haven't been able to find any skeletons which range from 59 to 38,000 years. So I don't know what happened there, but it's very interesting that, I don't know if you know, that the animals and plants grow to this, basically to reflect the size of the land that they live on. And if you're on a tiny island, you don't grow big because there wouldn't be enough food to keep you going. So they were really tiny and interesting. That was 2003. In 2008, Australopithecus, another version, Sediba, very human-like, walk upright and so on. And by the way, this thing at the back is just the rock that it was found on. But there's the body, and then again you can see the eyebrow ridges, almost flat head, and a snout. It's a female. She was found in South Africa. And estimated age 1.77 and 1.98 million years ago. She was about 1.2 meters tall. So this, what I'm showing you now, sort of findings, more recent findings. So that was Sediba, yeah. So he's the guy who found her, and there's an artist's impression of what she would have looked like. And in fact, have a look at this skull here and compare it to the man's skull. Quite different. Another one is a Denisovan, a very, very interesting discovery recently, 2010, in a cave in Siberia. They lived about 200,000 years ago till about 15,000 years ago. And it turns out that Australian and Papua New Guinea indigenous populations have Denisovan genes. And one wonders about that. So radiocarbon dating, this is in 2019, I think. Yeah, initially this was 2010, but later on they found some more information, and the oldest range from 195,000 to 122,000 years ago. So 200,000 is about the time that Homo sapiens came about. So there must have been some crossover somehow. But these guys were up in Siberia, whereas Homo sapiens developed in Africa. So there was enough time to move up and meet them, maybe. A lot of it is just assumption. Now, this old DNA was collected from the soil in the what's called the East Chamber, where they lived, in the cave, and dated to 217,000. They found this really, they were looking at the soil, and when they do this sort of thing, they have to make sure they don't contaminate it with more modern DNA. So so they probably existed from before Homo sapiens. So all they could find initially in 2010 was a little finger, a finger bone of a juvenile girl. They extracted the mitochondrial DNA from there, and just to remind you, mitochondrial DNA is different to cellular DNA, which is in the nucleus. The mitochondria they produce our energy, and they have their own DNA. On another talk, I'll go into more detail, but basically, the mitochondria were once, it is assumed, a type of a microorganism, like a bacterium with its own DNA that was subsumed into other cells, and it became a symbiotic relationship where the new cell and the mitochondrial cell, the old bacterium, they helped each other survive, and we've had them since. And mitochondria in us produce all the energy that we use, we need. So the nuclear DNA then finds that nuclear DNA, which they may have found in bones, have a close affinity to Neanderthals. Now, the DNA suggests that they have dark skins, their eyes and their hair, and also dark and more Neanderthal-like build and facial features. So we don't know exactly what their relationship was. And they interbred, it's assumed, no, sorry, with modern humans. Yeah, they interbred with modern, but like the Neanderthals did. And the highest percentage of Denisovan DNA occurs in Melanesians, in Aboriginal Australians, and Filipino Negritos. They're the Filipino indigenous people. So here we have the range of another one that's found. This is 2013, so it's more recent, Homo naledi. And it's, if you look at it, it's quite, quite old, long before modern man evolved. I'll play this. Really?
On your left is the entrance to where we went down the chambers.
Descending into the Rising Star Cave, Professor Lieberger puts a startling new discovery into perspective.
This is like opening up Tutankhamun's tomb.
Berger and his team of scientists say they've uncovered a new species of the human family tree. They call it Homo naledi.
We thought we had it figured out. We thought we knew how human origins worked.
He says what they found deep underground will shake our understanding of human evolution.
There are miles of tunnels underground here, and sometimes it's the tightest of fits. They had to recruit what they called underground astronauts to get in and make the discoveries.
He had posted that he was looking for skinny scientists.
Like many others, Lindsay Hunter answered Berger's Facebook ad. The dangerous job mostly fell to scientists who were able to crawl through the narrow passages. What they found was extraordinary.
That's it.
A chamber of more than 1,500 fossilized bones, coming up with the controversial conclusion that this is a burial ground, and that Homo naledi could have used fire to light the way.
We've just encountered another species that perhaps thought about its own mortality and went to great risk and effort to dispose of its dead in a deep, remote chamber right behind us.
It questions what makes us human.
It absolutely questions what makes us human, and I don't think we know anymore.
It's extraordinarily human-like.
It is in part, superficially, short fingers, long thumb.
Homo naledi is not human, but at times comes close. The original fossils are a strange mosaic of ancient and surprisingly modern. A brain no bigger than an orange, but feet almost identical to ours.
And every one of these tells a story.
Every one of them is a mystery to science.
And leaves many unanswered questions. They haven't been able to date the fossils yet, so Homo naledi may have lived tens of thousands of years ago, or even millions.
This was right under our nose. And we didn't see it. What else is out there?
Perhaps the very key to unlocking the story of humankind. David Mackenzie, CNN, Rising Star Cave, South Africa.
Where are we? Okay, get back. Ah. Why am I? Lost it. I think I'm getting old. I'm forgetting how to do this. Okay, so we're getting. Okay, this one here. Okay, so we have, this is a little video I showed you. They said that when they made the video, they didn't know the age, but since then, that's the age that they've got. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if I'm.
We can hear you, but not see your
Thank
screen.
you, thank you. I just, I'm in the dark here. So it shows you, they've superimposed in the diagram the skull of this Homo naledi over a human skull. Shows quite a major difference. Quite a major difference.
Sorry, Ruben, we can't see your screen.
Can't? Okay, let's go back. Share screen. It should be there. Okay, I'll have to go try that one. Okay. All right, can you see that now?
Yeah, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you, thank you. All right, so this is the one I was looking at, that they superimposed the bones that they found of the skull over a diagram of a human, a modern human, and you can clearly see the difference. The lovely picture. This is from National Geographic. Then 4 years ago, they found another Homo called Luzonesis, and in the Philippines, and they've been digging there for about 14 years for this, and they found that about 67, they lived there about 67,000 years ago, and it was about the size of the Homo florensis. And this is something else in 2017. There wasn't anything, but they're finding much earlier ones as well. So this is stuff that's interesting to a lot of people, most people I'd say, about knowing history, and this photo was in one of the papers. Now, we know that interbreeding with a very early man meant that genes were being swapped, and that helped with the survival, because some genes will survive, some people will survive better in heat, others in the cold. And a lot of those genes are with us at the moment. So some of these are the DNA inherited from Neanderthals seems to have involved in boosting immunity. And something from the Denisovans in Tibet may have allowed them to survive better in the high altitudes. As we know, people like us who are sea level dwellers, if we go very high up mountains, you would have a lot of trouble breathing. People who live like in Tibet, very high up, their hemoglobin is somewhat different, to be able to support more oxygen from, but extract whatever little oxygen's in the air, they're able to extract enough to live. But we would not be able to do that. And if we go and live a few thousand, I don't know, some hundreds of meters higher, top of Mount Hotham, you'll find that you, over time, you grow more red blood cells to move, to survive better with more oxygen. But their hemoglobin is a little different. Now, here's a summary starting with Ardipithecus ramidus that was found in 92, about 4.4 million years ago. I won't go through them all. We've gone through most of them. And these are in order of ages. So, and Homo sapiens, again, they're not sure. People are finding things a little earlier than 200,000, but the 200,000 is still the current mark where we developed. Now, you've got all these yourself in the notes I sent you, so you can have a look at that in your own time. So it's around 200,000, about 100,000 years, they started to move northwards and westwards. So they started moving. They were curious even then, of course, like all humans are. What's around the corner? You know, can we do better elsewhere? But it's a very slow process because they walked everywhere. They didn't know what's there. They didn't know if anybody else was there, because there would have been some early man, as we saw, Neanderthals and Denisovans and stuff. They were there. And whether they were battles or they became friends, because we know that they mated eventually, and then the Homo sapiens would have to get used to new food or to have to find new food. It's all a very slow process. And it took about 35,000 years to reach Australia. So all evidence at the moment showing that Australian Aborigines, it came about 65,000 years. And that, by the way, is from the clay, from the rock art in a particular cave, I can't remember which one, in WA, which has been dated to about 65,000 years. So as the effects of migration and the slow migration that it was, once they left Africa, various physical changes seem to occur to help them survive. So some examples. So we're assuming that they're all black initially in Africa, because the blacker you are, the darker you are, the less the UV affects your skin. It could be so we us whites easily get burnt, easily get cancer. The blacker is a wonderful adaptation not to do that. It increases the UV, so it doesn't the melanin. It absorbs the UV, so it doesn't actually affect the skin much. The surface area to volume ratios, they changed of limbs and bodies. So the longer the limbs are in the hot areas, the quicker they lose heat due to surface area to volume ratio. It's one of the talks I give. Spent a bit of time on this with samples, exactly. So the shorter limbs and bodies retain the heat. So Eskimos today are quite short people, they're stocky people, shortish arms, shortish legs, and they don't lose heat as fast as Aborigines here, or Africans, or any of the groups that live in the heat. Now, Asian eyelids, the little slitty eyelids, they actually, they were great adventurers. They went up the Himalayas very high up, and huge ultraviolet, and they probably a lot of them probably died falling off the ground because they couldn't see due to the cataracts that developed fairly quickly up there. They didn't have sunglasses, but through time, the eyes modified to become very dark eyes to let less UV through, and the eyelids developed to form a slit, so less light gets through, but they can see, but a third eyelid, an extra eyelid, developed because if you're in the sunlight and you shut your eyes and look up at the sun, you can see the light. The extra eyelid that the Asians, well, today's Asians have, they can't, because it's an extra layer of fat in so the skin which goes around, and it's got fat in it, and it absorbs, it just doesn't allow the ultraviolet to get through. So that would have reduced the level of cataract greatly. And then nose shapes. Wide noses help people in hot and humid environments, and they were modified to narrow noses, and which will help in cold climates. But in a little video, it also mentioned that broad noses help warm the air going if you're breathing through your nose. Of course, if you do, it warms the air. So I'll put this in. This is what I understood, but I am not sure about the broad noses in the higher altitudes. Maybe so, probably is. Now these are very interesting graphs. Here we have around 200,000. This is the area of Africa where man developed. They didn't travel all that far. And then about 150,000 years ago, they moved further south, 130 there, and later on they moved a little bit further north there. About 100,000 years ago, they went that way. There were two migrations, by the way, out of Africa. One was about 70,000. One was about 100,000. The 100,000 one, they took over, they went through Europe and part of from there, 100,000 there, and then over to Asia. About 25,000 years ago, they went into the Americas. There's the Bosphorus. Was it the Bosphorus? Anyway, there was a sea there, but there was then, there is now. Then there was a land bridge, and then they became the North American Indians that went further south, and the South American Indians. Here, those that left about 70,000 years ago, worked their way through and got to Australia about 65,000 years ago, and then they ended up in Tasmania about 40,000 years ago. And even that, it's being separated at that time, the Tasmanian Aborigines developed different characteristics, different physical aspects to them to survive in the cold much better than because when they came, they were surviving in the heat, but they evolved. So what was I going to say? If any of you have been to South America, what I call the South American Indians in Peru and other places, they do have Asian features because they came over the Himalayas. They were Asian all the whole way. The North American Indians also have certain Asian appearances, but it seemed to be much more defined in the South American ones. Here's another one here. Mitochondrial DNA I mentioned before. Now, mitochondrial DNA moves from one generation to the next through the mother's DNA, and the mother. I won't go through that, but each area in the world has got slightly different mitochondrial DNA. Normal DNA mutates fairly quickly. The mitochondrial DNA mutates exceptionally slowly. So here we are down the bottom here, we have the mutation rate is 2.2 to 2.9% per million years. Very, very, very slow. So by looking at your mitochondrial DNA, they would know where your maternal line came from. So, so the variations, and they each area, they're given a letter. I don't know how that came about, how that's decided. But these are the L's. You got I, J, K, and then all these letters here probably because of the density of the population. And then in the east here, with all these letters. In the Americas, are different. In South America, you have some A, C, and D from there as well. You have C and D. You see that follow the movements. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Here's another story that they found they found some hair from a Western Australian man, and they found some DNA, and they worked out what I was just showing you here, that the left between 62 and 75,000 years ago, there was a range of movements, and some ended up in Papua New Guinea and some went to Australia. Yeah, basically, so tracing the DNA, it's very interesting. I found these amazing articles. If any of you are interested in anthropology or even the science of it, I've given you these articles to read. That's there. Now, we have across the world huge variations. We're basically all the same, but we have difference in height, different in color and texture, shapes, face shapes are different. And anything that's not biological, we call it cultural. So we have this cultural evolution we also look at. So it happened over millions of years. What changed? Language, art, music, religion, dance, social consciousness, social interrelationships, families, friends, attitudes, and architecture. All these come under cultural evolution. So, yeah, so that's really the end of it. Here is a brief summary of everything I've said. I'll let you have a look at that in the time when you have some time. A couple of cartoons here, though. So they come out through evolution, they leave the water, work on land, they modify, and all they can think of: eat, survive, reproduce. And a man with his amazing brain saying, he's actually asking, what's it all about? It's a very good question. Well, this says everything. But lovely drawings. And finally, I like this one. Don't call it evolution. The little guy at the back gets offended. Okay, so guys, that's it. I hope you got, sorry, Basil, I can't hear you. Press your. Any questions that I might be able to answer?
You can hear me now.
Yes, Basil.
That was a mammoth presentation.
Took a long time to put together.
I've heard of, having been a member of this class for a long time.
Yeah.
you've expanded it so much that I don't even recognize it anymore from the first one. It's really, really good. You would have put an enormous amount of work into it. Congratulations, really good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Well done.
Sorry?
Well done.
Oh, thanks, Arthur. And it just, I really enjoy the research. And I get a buzz talk to you guys. It's once a teacher, always a teacher. But a lot of teachers just don't have anything to do with teaching. But I can't get away from it, so I do it. So I had a look. The next talk in a couple of weeks. I did it some time ago on Aboriginal technology, something very different, because the Aborigines being here in Australia over 65,000 years, they developed a huge amount of knowledge about climate, about what they can grow. Well, they don't actually grow, but they did in some ways, and what they can't grow. And you probably think that all Aborigines were nomadic. They weren't. In Victoria, there were large areas around Warrnambool where they lived permanently. They had stone houses. I don't know if you know that, but it's amazing. So I look forward to seeing you guys in a fortnight, all being well. What's the date? What's today? 25th. Oh, I think, is it the 4th of April? Something like that. So I don't know if I told you guys, I received an honour, an Australia Day honour in OAM. So thank you. And working for not working, sort of many things, many organizations, and having spent 15 or 16 years talking to U3A people, that's part of it. So on the yesterday fortnight, I'm going to the what's it called? Government House near the Shrine for the investiture. So I don't know what I'm getting. I think I'm getting a little pin to put on my suit, but
There you go.
probably a medal. Anyway, so it's all good. It's all good.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's I'm thrilled, and everything I've done over the many years, it's sort of all voluntary, but I just enjoy doing it just for the fun of it, and I get a lot out of it. Who that's a drawing? Now, I've seen that before somewhere. Did you do that? Oh, thank you. Press your button down. I can't hear you. Press your space bar. Helena.
Unmute.
I've got now. I say I usually like to draw and to listen. I have to do two things.
Oh, one day you can send me a copy.
I would like to give it to you, actually.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Show it one more time, Helena. Show it
Yeah,
one
I
more
will.
time. Awesome. How nice.
Very
Can you
good
see?
likeness.
Actually, it looks better not on the computer, in the real life. Okay, thank you. Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you for the great
Thank you, Ruben.
class. And the
Thank
next
you.
sounds
Thank
very
you.
Pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
yes.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
All the best, guys.
Well,
Have a
bye-bye.
good week.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop recording.